Faye from Face World Media. I am here with Dave Ceddia. Welcome, David.
Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
Awesome. And by the way, I just by accident called you David. Is there a big difference between Dave and David? I wasn't so sure.
I don't know. I usually go by Dave. Doesn't really matter though.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. So let me briefly introduce you to Dave. And this is pretty incredible because I was watching a YouTube video and then I discovered the software that I'm so passionate about and I pay for it. And that's why we're here to talk about it, which is called Recut. And the website is called getrecut.com. It's developed by Dave. And real quick, Dave is a software developer based in Burlington, Massachusetts, which is not too far away from me. I was getting excited interviewing someone, chatting with someone locally. And he's also a content creator who in 2018 quit his full-time software job to focus on creating educational resources for JavaScript, React developers. He runs a blog, daveceddia.com, and wrote book in React in 2016. And in 2019, expanded to a full self-paced video course called Pure React, purereact.com. And after making hours of screenshots, that's the origin story, and helping frustrated, and I'm just gonna kind of riff this part for video content creators like myself, whether you're a YouTuber or video editor, individually or as an agency, this software is just incredible because it cuts out all the silence, the ums, the ahs, or just me pausing, not sure what I'm trying to say. And it's amazing. It will reduce my we're going to do a demo shortly, but reduce my 17-minute recordings to sometimes like 15 to 12 minutes. And if you're not an editor, you won't get this because it takes forever, like hours to edit out all the silence segments. And on top of that, it literally takes minutes, sometimes seconds for the export, which is unlike Descript that takes forever. So I love Descript for other reasons. So anyway, long the intro, Dave, welcome. I'm so thrilled to be chatting with you right now.
Me too. Really glad to be here. This is going to be fun.
Awesome. Well, so let's please jump in. And if you're watching this currently or after live stream, please leave us questions. And I tend to monitor the channels, and we're here talking about, creative entrepreneurship, creator economy. So the first question we want to kick it off is that, Dave, I'm a current user of Recut and absolutely love it. It's so simple, clean, effective. It's so easy to talk about it because I'm in on it every single day. But I want to kind of hear a bit of your origin stories on noticing that this is something that people might need, people like myself, but to actually develop that from ideation to launching, like what was the beginning stage like? Did you have any doubts about like, I don't know whether I have time or I want to do this? Will this work?
Yeah, I think there was a lot of that actually. So you kind of touched on the origin story a bit. So I was you know, was still am, I guess, a course creator, writing mostly for JavaScript developers, and so I made a bunch of screencasts,
Mhm.
and the editing process was always like my least favorite part. So I think it's partly because I'm just not great at doing stuff on the first take. So I would leave these pauses between my tries, and then the editing was kind of like mechanical at that point.
Mhm.
Just go through, chop out all the silences and stuff. But it's really tedious, and it always felt like the computer should be able to do it for me. So at some point, I was like, I wonder if there's a way to automate this. And I went looking around and found some scripts. And actually, kind of like my first attempt was to write my own script to do this. And it was like, hey, it sort of proved out the concept. It's like this seems like it could work, but it's not visual. It's not like you don't get the live preview aspect
Mhm.
with the script. And um, so it sort of put the idea in my head, like I could build this thing, but there was definitely a lot of like I had to kind of convince myself that I should try to build a video editor because it's like not a simple piece of software to build, and I don't know anything. Like I
That's
didn't
interesting.
know anything about video, like really no video background, like development
Mhm.
wise. Um, so that was kind of the beginning of it.
Interesting. I think you touched upon something that I don't want to say, oh, I'm so bad at it, but I tend to want to create this kind of fully fleshed out, like this hub of tools and features and, everything that anyone would ever want for that, whatever, for Zoom Guide, Zoom webinar. And that's kind of part of my niche and YouTube strategy. But I also realized that you have nailed a part of our process as video editors, as YouTubers, is that the grueling editing process, especially at the beginning. I think preparing rough cuts, it's very challenging process, and it's not very interesting. And there's a lot of one thing I don't even think I mentioned to you earlier is that there's a lot of negative like self-talk, judgment that goes on watching your first iteration of a video. Like, of course, we're human beings. We're going to pause and not sure what to say. But because of Recut, I kind of remove myself from that process. And whatever I get in return is just a much cleaner version of it. So I find myself to kind of dive into work more positively, more quickly, and just overall more effective.
That's awesome. Sort of a nice side benefit. I'd never really thought of that, but that's that's great to hear.
Awesome. Or if you don't mind, I'm just going to do a quick demo. And this is the area. By the way, I was a software developer for several years and studied computer
Cool.
science. And the funny thing is that whenever we do a demo, right? Like we're always thinking like, is it gonna, I hope it really works.
No, I know.
Right? And so for everybody who's watching live, I'm gonna hide. You can still see us in the lower corner. And literally, I'm just gonna go to my download folder and show you guys. And feel free to comment on this. Dave's like, "Hey, you're using it wrong." Um, I am gonna drag a file, and this is kind of interesting. This is me literally demoing, comparing this part, which is recut versus descript. But you can see like the moment I get this file in here, I'm just like, this is like just watching a phenomenal painting. Like, I'm just getting so excited. You can see there's a little like fainted red bars here. And you can zoom in and zoom out. And what are those, Dave?
So interesting that the waveform stopped displaying.
Oh, there we go.
We were just talking about demos, like it doesn't do that. I haven't seen that before. So
No worries.
we've got the so you've got the blue waveform, and then the little red sections are chunks of silence that it's found. And those silent bits are still like tweakable. I'll let you keep going with
Mhm.
this.
Right here. Yeah, oh, absolutely. Like you can, like you said, you can change the minimum duration, change up the padding here. You can remove blips. Some people like their videos cut really tight. I'm someone, well, I like there to be some breathing room. So actually, by default, the threshold by default, or what's here considered auto, I think it's quite good.
Yeah, so it tries to make a best guess at like what's a reasonable silence threshold, but you can tweak that too if it seems like it's cutting off two words too closely or not
Mhm.
enough or whatever.
Yeah, and I love it, by the way. So as I'm moving around, like I'm able to preview it. This is Faye, and in this part, I'm going to show you. So I'm able to kind of move this cursor around, then I can see there's like something that can be removed very easily, and this is super helpful. And we talked about the panel on the right. I love how clean it is. It's the only software that I think I've used without feeling overwhelmed or like stupid inside. And here this is the export feature. So you can just simply export this original format. The pass through is so fast, but you do have the high quality re-encode, which is slower, but not much slower, frankly. So let me show you. I mean, this is crazy. This is the fast pass through. And I don't think so I can just simply save it. This one probably has been done. But it literally takes less than like 30 seconds. Dave, am I crazy? Or is that?
No, the pass through is really fast. Yeah. There's some I think there's some issues with it sometimes, like certain files don't play well with the pass through.
Mhm.
Have had some people say that doesn't always work, but if it does work, it's awesome. So I feel like that's like try that one first.
Yeah, this super helpful. And then you're so honest about yourself. It's like, oh, there's some imperfections, but here, what's also amazing is this is, by the way, it's not even sponsored, but the export timeline only down here. I am a Final Cut Pro user, so you have different formats, and my producer uses the Adobe Premiere, sometimes Final Cut Pro. My content manager uses DaVinci. And you literally can choose these apps and you can import those XMLs right back to Final Cut Pro or whatever the software of your choice. And it will remove the silent clips. And as a result, I will stop the share right now. As a result, I get a much tighter, shorter video rough cut to go from. And I have noticed personally for me, if you guys know me, I'm on YouTube, twice, 2 videos a week basically has saved me hours. And so therefore, I think it's really wonderful. And I do have included a link right in the description. No matter where you are, there's a $10 discount thanks to Dave to provide ad to FaceWorld. Definitely check it out. I think, yeah, link below. I think it's definitely one of the best $100 I've spent, which is going to be $89 or $90 for you guys. So yeah, check it out. Well, let's keep the conversation going, Dave. Is there anything else you would like to talk about?
Well, thanks for that demo. It's awesome to hear. I think one of my favorite things about this software is like just being able to save people time. Like that's kind of the whole goal is to make it fast to use and just to make the whole editing process less painful.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, this part is it is very painful. Like I like learning how to edit, but at the end of the day, as a solo entrepreneur or me, someone who's running a very small team, it's just so important for everybody to not only work harder, myself included, but also work smarter as well, which I think it's so underrated sometimes because we live in this world economy. Everybody's focused on efficiency, but not so much on as much as on self-care and working less and enjoying life more as much as they should. So
100%.
yeah, I mean let's see. I'm gonna route to some of the questions that I'm so eager to ask, which is a lot of my audience here on social media, but especially on YouTube, are entrepreneurs. It's interesting. There's kind of a spectrum. People who are starting out, thanks to the great resignation, people of different levels as well. And there are also people like me who have been going at it for a while. I've been an entrepreneur full time since early 2016. So 6 years into it for me. And there's some people have done it a lot longer and trying to work smarter. So could you maybe talk to us about your journey, maybe why you decided to leave your job in 2018 and start stepping into the unknown?
Yeah. So thinking back, I think, you know, before that, I always had I just worked as a software developer full time, and I kind of got the sense that I wanted to branch out and do stuff on my own. I think part of that was this feeling of like maybe unfulfillment, and in some sense, like the software stuff was fun, but we never really had like direct connections with users. Like we didn't know what kind of impact our software was having or whatever. And yeah, so I felt like maybe doing my own thing, I'd have like a more direct connection with people, and um, and I think that was a big part of it. And I think also just kind of personally, like I have a lot of hobbies and stuff, and I always kind of wanted more time to do
Mm,
stuff that doesn't work. So it's like
same with
if I
me. Yeah.
kind of owned my own time, this would be ideal. So yeah, and I think I spent a good number of years kind of doing uh nothing. I did a lot of reading and watching stuff and like
Nothing.
not actually doing any business stuff though. Like a
Mhm,
lot of, reading business books and things. Um and uh that was sort of my intro to it. And then I went down this brief, well, not brief, kind of like my plan for a while was the early retirement thing, which I think is a little more common now. Like then
mhm.
Mr. Money Mustache was my intro into that world.
Yeah, I
But
love his
that
work.
that idea of like, save up we like 25x your annual spending or something, and you could
Mhm,
basically live off of dividend returns or whatever. And
mhm,
that was my plan for a little while. And then I realized like, well, if I get a job or like make some side income, can sort of make that happen faster. And um, combined with minimizing expenses and stuff, it's like, well, okay.
mhm.
Once the side business got enough revenue to where it was covering expenses, I felt like, well, worst case, I can go back and get another job. So I'll just try this out for a while.
By the
Uh,
way, quick question. You said there you find a side gig that covers some of the minimum or reasonable amount of expenses. Which side gig are you referring to?
yeah, so success. I realized I skipped that. So 2015, I took a business course called 30 by 500 by Amy Hoy and Alex Hillman. And this is the one that got me out of the spinning my wheels and finally got me doing something. And so 2015, I started a blog
Mm,
about then Angular JS, but like JavaScript developer stuff, and um, teaching developers that way. And then wrote a book in 2016. And so it was that book was like the first product I'd ever sold online,
Mhm.
and it got to the point where that was making like $2,000 a month ish, and it was like, okay,
That's
this
impressive. Yeah.
this plus some savings, like I can probably make this work for a while. It's no developer salary, but you know,
Mm,
um, we won't starve, right? So, uh, yeah, and that was kind of it. And then 2018, I went full time on creator stuff, and
mhm.
did a couple more courses since then. And but yeah,
Mm. This is really good. I mean, I'm hearing 30 by 500 for the first time. And that is incredible. And so I always love discovering new things, and at the same time always surprised by how much sometimes the same resources and people we follow to like
yeah,
before we began as entrepreneurs ourselves. So
yeah.
I love first question from Michael Buckby. How much time do you save making videos with Recut? So I would love to hear the answer from Dave as well. For me, to clarify, Michael, so I'm not a vlogger. It means that I don't really kind of capture my daily lives running around like beauty stuff, and but instead I do a lot of tech tutorials, and I'm super passionate about making technology really accessible for anyone who either hates or really intimidated by tech in general. So I do a lot of sit down talking head, and I also do a lot of screen tutorials, which means I'm recording my screen like click by click. So I would say that as a result, I find myself with a short video, I save a good maybe 1 hour. If I'm editing the video typically for 2 to 3 hours, I can cut down like an hour just with a rough cut. And I also think the quality is really good. I'm not waiting for Recut to like spin and I have to go get coffee. No, like I throw the video in and I just sit there. It's like, yeah, I got my coffee already here. I'm just gonna continue working. I actually like the minimum distraction. Frankly, whatever you're waiting for, that's kind of the problem with software. Like I find myself, and then I come back, it's like, what? Wait, what was I doing again? Yeah. So a lot of time for sure. And I would say longer videos, sit down videos, yeah, knock off a good hour. That means a lot to me. I'm not sure if you guys ever measure your productivity. For me, average day is about 4 hours of very concentrated work. A great day is 6 to 8. So that 1 hour in, kind of perspective is a 25% of my valuable time back in a day. So Dave, what's your answer? What videos do you create? How much time do you save, or do you hear from your audience that they actually save?
So I've heard from people who have saved like multiple hours per video. I think one person emailed me and said they saved like 30 hours of editing, and I was like, wow, that's awesome. It's like,
Yeah.
um, I think personally, I do the same kind of stuff really as you do, like
Mm,
screencasts. And that's the use case I originally built it for, which is why it's like really simple and kind of stripped down.
mm,
We can talk a bit about that too, but I yeah, for the screencasts, it probably saves me a good hour or so per, per screencast or something like that. Um, the other thing that I have sort of like a side benefit I hadn't realized was that it makes me less worried about messing up while I'm recording, because I know I don't have to edit those out. Like I just like stay silent, and
mm.
it's not like, oh, I'm piling onto my editing time by dragging this out. It's like the quieter I can be between takes, the easier it'll be to edit out later. So just stay silent
Yeah.
and try again.
So true. Mentally, it is such a relief that I used to judge myself too for getting into a silence or not sure what I was doing. And I think in a way that Recut helps me become better and more efficient as I'm ideating and recording. And I can imagine, by the way, someone saving a ton of time. So if you are a vlogger and you have so much footage, a lot of B-roll. I've been there. I actually did a documentary film, and I just remember like out of the output of 12 to 14 minutes came from days of shooting. So can you imagine like that? We're easily talking about saving a ton of time, cutting out and cleaning up all the B-roll.
Yeah.
So super helpful for anybody who's watching. I saw like just now, there's like 10, 12 people hopped on. Please say hi if you're here. I would love to know if there are any video editors or people running production companies among us, and say hi and please ask your questions. And Malcolm, if you're still watching, thank you for joining us again. So Dave, I think I would love to, for people who are listening to this, to understand that we don't always go from point A to B with on a really smooth ride, because everything, your website, whether it's Dave Ceddia, whether it's getrecaught.com, looks really clean, a beautiful website, everything that
Thank
you've
you.
listed there, popular content. But could you talk about like how you were kind of navigating your journey and maybe didn't get here so quickly? Like, what are some of the roadblocks or self-doubts that you ran into?
Yeah, you mentioned the design specifically. That's always been thank you, by the way, because I feel like I don't think I'm great at design. I definitely know that I'm better than I used to be, and that's one of the things that's like early on was I was just horrible at, and I've gotten a lot better at through practice and courses and things. Um,
Mhm,
but yeah, there's I feel like there's lots of ups and downs in entrepreneurship. There's lots of self doubts and stuff, and even if things are going well, like there's this sort of constant churn of like, I don't know if I'm doing the right thing. Should I really be spending time on this, or am I spending too much time on this, or whatever? Um,
mhm,
and that's just kind of a constant thing. I kind of thought like, oh, once I make a product or once I quit my job or something, like then I'll be successful and that'll go away. And that's just like
mm.
not how that goes.
So true. Yeah. I mean, the you mentioned that there are a lot of ups and downs. So even critical part is like even when you're doing well, you feel like you need to do more. I think I
Yeah.
think as human beings, one thing I learned that I've talked about before is the idea that you need to, if you're working full time right now, you need a bigger, better title, you need more salary. And I get it. It seems like part of the natural progression, like you're making progress. Same thing with being an entrepreneur. It's like I need to make more money now in February than January, and I need to work smarter, but it is impossible or to think that I'm gonna be okay once I get through a certain point, because you may or may not get there. And also I want to say, like, just because like if you publish a video on social media or YouTube, you have experienced this. You have some posts you didn't even put much thoughts into, and it became sort of relatively viral, tons of comments, people love it, they share it, oh my god. Then you look at your thoughtful content. You dwelled 2 days on it. You lost sleep over it. You feel like you're putting your best work, and people kind of ignore and don't really care. And it's important to sometimes to ignore the vanity metrics. We're really important to ignore that because it's so easy to judge ourselves to say, okay, now I can just some more. I don't know, it's something called a shit posting, I think, on Twitter. Oh, I just do more. I only do that now because those are the things that work. Like, how do you balance that, Dave? Like to mm,
Yeah,
define what to
that's
share.
that's always tough. I've never really been very good at guessing how well something is gonna do, which might mean that I'm not good at coming up with good content ideas. I don't know, but my solution to that was to so when I was blogging more, all of those ideas, almost all the ideas came directly from things I would see on forums.
Mhm.
This is something I learned from that 30 by 500 class where they call it sales safari. So you're like taking notes and kind of um, reading through places where people are hanging out and figuring out like, well, what are people struggling with and how could I help? And really writing posts to answer those questions. And it was kind of like, well, even if this doesn't go viral or something, like I know that this is a useful thing for at least a
Mhm.
few people. And that worked out pretty well. Like it's sort of, I think it's kind of a gave me like natural SEO. Like
Mhm.
I get a bunch of traffic from search these days, and like that's built up over time, but I never really did much on in terms of like SEO hacks and keyword research and all this kind of stuff. It was kind of like, well, finding the actual problems is the keyword research, and so if you write solutions to those problems, like
Mhm.
it ends up working out pretty well. Um,
Yeah.
and some of them do well, and some of them don't, and it's kind of like you end up building this back catalog of stuff.
Yeah. Speaking of back catalog, I know that this may not even be, I mean, it says every post ever, but I'm sure you probably have written and published somewhere else. But in terms of a blog post, I mean, these are the articles. And I would say, like, some people might look at this, they're like, oh, I've published even more than that. Or some people just say, oh, there is no way for me to reach this level or this, number of posts. And it's interesting how we process that as individuals and content creators. That if somebody told me that I have to interview 300 people and write 300 additional blog posts, it's going to be hard to swallow, like to say, really, how can I get to that one viral post? And it doesn't work that way. And what I realized over the years is, where did the time go when I look back 6, 7 years of being an entrepreneur and I ended up creating so much content? It's impossible to really predict, like, to your best ability. Just, it's not possible to predict what's going to hit. So you might as well write them.
Yeah.
And right, like using Dave's example, recut. Like, I think as a YouTuber, I do wake up in the morning, go to sleep thinking like, how can I possibly reduce the time to make editing more efficient? Because that's literally is the one thing that stops me from creating more content or even wanting to create more content. And you solve that very problem. And I'm looking at this like as a developer, I can see like, oh, how to read React errors, like how specific errors, we all run into them, and React or a certain brand, these companies might not provide us with the most accurate, most helpful content, and you step in here to really do a much better job explaining it. So I think these are really good tactics.
Yeah, thanks. I think it's yeah, and I think some of the posts, they're more specific and less specific. I think some of them were like broader tutorials and stuff, but they kind of over time, I think to your point about like being told like I need to do 300 blog posts or something. I think that's something that you hear a lot in
Mhm.
creator circles. It's like just do 2 years of work or just do 100 blog posts or something. And I think it's kind of true in a sense, but also super demotivating to look at this mountain that you have to climb first. And
Yeah.
I think it's easy to look at that and say like, well, I won't be successful until I hit the top of the mountain. But actually there's going to be a bunch of little successes along the way. And those
Mhm.
are the ones that really keep you going, I think. And it's like hearing from people who read a post, they're like, oh, this is super helpful. This saved me a bunch of time today or whatever. Like
Mhm.
those things kind of kept me going.
Yeah. So great. Keep telling us what are some of the small mountains. I like that metaphor. And it's very true. People sending you these lovely messages and things that money can buy. And I mean, if we use get recut, or recut as an example, how long did it take for you to develop like the MVP, minimal viable product, something usable? How long did it take? And when did you see that little, I don't know, like that kind of milestone that's significant to say, oh, I probably should devote more of my time, and this is a thing now, like people like it, and there's a future and growth to it.
That's a good question. So Recut, I think I started it in 2019, I guess. It was probably a few months uh of development or something.
Full time.
Um yeah, full time ish.
Well,
Yeah, I don't
20,
know.
30
I've,
hours a
yeah,
week is significant. It's up there.
I've never been great at tracking my time. I think looking back, I don't know if it could have been 40, it could have been more. Like I'll end up working into the night and stuff. Like if I'm involved in a problem
Hmm.
or it's
Yeah.
exciting or something, I'll just kind of keep going. Um but it was probably a few months. Um and then before that, prior to that was probably a good, I would say maybe 6 months or so of like, oh, I think I could solve this problem. Video editor is probably too hard. Oh, maybe I could solve that problem. No, maybe not yet. And
Thinking about it. Uh-huh.
yeah, kind of thinking about it and like getting myself like, I don't know, to build up the courage to build it or something.
Yeah.
Um, that honestly was like it took a little while. Um, and I think I'm trying to think of like I shared a couple tweets about it. Um, and reached out to some people to give out beta copies, and people seemed pretty excited about it. And
Hmm.
then the actual like launch day tweet, I don't know how that ended up getting picked up, but it got picked up by a bunch of big YouTubers and people retweeted it and stuff. And that was kind of the point where I was like, oh, maybe this is cool because these are not people in my audience really. Like I had built up this audience of developers who are
Yeah.
not a whole lot of overlap there with video editors.
Mhm.
Um, and to tweeting that out and seeing all this like positive reactions around it, I'm like, oh, cool, maybe this is a bigger problem than I imagined.
Yeah, I mean, you launch officially. I saw, excuse me, the tweet that you pinned at the top of your Twitter handle. I think that was January 2021. So it's been just a little over a year since the official
Yeah.
launch of Recut, and you had beta users. Do you mind giving us like a rough number of like how many current or active users or users in total that you have generated?
I think it's like 500 or so now, almost 600 actually.
600. Oh, that's
600 or so
good.
copies. Yeah. And so like I've also changed the pricing around a few times. So, it's not like 600 times $100, but yeah, it's pretty great.
Wow. So let's talk about pricing real quick because that part is you hear such contradicting feedback sometimes
Yeah.
today, right?
Yeah.
So you want to offer something for people who are new to pricing, thinking about pricing. There is a pretty big difference between one time versus recurring, which in this case for Recut, it is a one time. I should probably drink some water like Dave just did. It is a one-time payment. And and then you think about it, Dave has to maintain the software. There may be support that goes into it, which I don't think this software needs much support, which is freaking brilliant, right? And it is just so intuitive. And so yeah, I mean, how many iterations of pricing and what goes into the consideration? Like, oh, it's too expensive. Oh, it's not. It's
Yeah.
not enough. Oh,
Yeah. No, that nails it. That's exactly what goes into this consideration. And then eventually I just picked a number. I think it was like,
magic
originally,
number.
yeah, originally it was $29. I was thinking like, well, it's like a utility. Um, I mean, it
Mhm,
will save people a lot of time, but I don't know if this is a real thing people want.
mhm,
And I think it was a few months after the release and seeing the feedback I was getting, and also people saying like, I would have paid $200 for this. I was like, I should probably charge more, especially
mhm.
for a one-time thing. Um, and then the whole one-time versus recurring thing. I think there's personally, I don't love paying for subscriptions. I'm not sure anyone really likes paying for
True.
subscriptions, but there's also the aspect of like keeping things simple. So, you know, one of the things I had in mind building this in the first place was like video editor is a large project. Like
Mm.
building something that's gonna tackle like ScreenFlow or Final Cut or even Descript, like these are huge things. And I was like, well, I can't build that whole thing just to solve this problem, right? Like I'm just gonna build a thing that kind of bolts into one of those other editors.
Yeah.
So um and as part of that, keeping things simple was like, well, I've sold one-off products before. I know how to do like set up a product in Sendowl and have a download link and stuff.
Mhm,
Um, versus setting up recurring billing, and then there's also this kind of like ongoing, ongoing expectation of maintenance, and like I don't really know what the future roadmap is. What if nobody likes it? Like there's
mhm,
all these questions, and I was like, it'll just be simpler to do one-time billing. Um,
mm.
so that was kind of where that came from.
Do you regret do you regret it? Do you have any challenges thinking about, while it does, I mean, the software, any software needs maintenance for anybody using
Yeah.
any software who's not a software developer should know this. If you have a website, doesn't matter how clean it is, it needs maintenance. And yeah, like do you still think about now I need to bring the software to the next level, maybe working with influencers. Now you're developing a Windows version of it. You're thinking maybe I need to charge more. Maybe I need to, I don't know, create a subscription for the community or something. Like, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, the thought has crossed my mind for sure. Um, like whether I should be charging some kind of subscription or just charging more or something.
Mm,
And it's still kind of, I haven't made up my mind forever. I might change at some point. I think
mhm,
the one thing that I haven't been um so one of the pricing options that I thought of was the sketch model,
mhm,
which is the kind of like you basically pay once and you keep it forever, but
mhm,
you get a year of updates with your payment. So like you pay $99 for Sketch, for instance, you get a
mhm.
full year of updates, and then in a year you just stop getting updates, but you can keep using it forever.
Yeah.
And I was thinking of doing that with Recut, and I probably will at some point because that feels like kind of a natural
Yeah.
thing, like you're paying for updates, but it can be one-time purchase if you want it to be, basically.
Mhm.
Um, but anyway, that's one of the things I thought of doing that also requires some development work on the back end, and is like,
Mhm.
I'll do that later if this works out. So
Yeah. Well,
we'll
thanks for
see.
the kind of the deep dive into thinking about pricing because that's I think that's an area like a lot of us run into to think that there is a magic number where there sort of is and isn't. And just because something that works, that has worked for other people, may not necessarily work for you. Um, and so, like, I actually forgot to ask this question, Dave, related to your audience. Like, I think we just assumed that people who are most likely video editors or YouTubers or agencies, like of the 600 people roughly, I mean, now you have a more than a sample size of people. Like, what have you noticed about their roles? Like, who are they who decided to buy Recut, and how did they discover you?
So that's a good question. I think mostly it's been YouTubers.
Mm.
um,
Mhm.
which is sort of like when I built it, I was thinking for course creators and like, how am I going to find course creators?
Yeah.
And it has turned out that like, oh, actually, there's this much larger pool of people who make videos. They're on YouTube. So,
Yeah.
um, kind of logical looking back, like, oh, of course it should have been YouTubers, but that has been like, I think that's most of the audience, or at least most of the customers I've interacted with anyway.
Okay.
Um, yeah, I think there's probably not, it's not all YouTube, but it's a
Good
lot.
number.
It's a lot of YouTubers.
Have you noticed the kind of the characteristics of these YouTubers? Are they big YouTubers? Are they just starting out, like they're trying to learn how to edit, and you've made it really simple? Or, I was just wondering, like, what type of YouTubers are they? Small business owners, companies?
Yeah, I think it's kind of a mix.
Hmm.
Um, I think I have heard from a few people who are like just getting started. I think there are definitely people who have like already have channels and are familiar with editing and like know the pain that this
Hmm.
is solving.
Hmm.
Um, which I think is in some sense almost like more natural sale or
Hmm.
something, like the people who already like they know they have this problem.
Hmm.
Um, and in terms of like how people have found out about it, I think that's also been um mostly YouTubers, I think. I
Hmm.
think people talking amongst themselves, or like I've had a few people do videos about it and some affiliates, um, like yourself. I think
Yeah.
like the affiliate avenue seems to be working out pretty well for getting the word out. Um, but yeah, I'm always kind of looking for more ideas for that too.
Yeah, I'm just wondering because it does I think it's a very pleasant surprise to realize there are a lot of YouTubers, and YouTubers tend to have some similar goals, some not so much. For instance, the YouTubers that I'm going after, that I'm working with, in terms of strategies, are often small business owners. So I haven't really worked with anyone per se who are focused on developing that one viral video. Whereas a lot of my clients are focused on how to connect better in terms of creating smart content creation that's linked and mapped to their services and products. And a lot of my clients are speakers, authors, and entrepreneurs. And it's so fascinating to realize that for an engine like YouTube, the marketing is evergreen, that you could literally have only 50 to 100 views on your videos, but the right people get to you. That's it. A lot of my basically clients are charging 100 200K retainer, so every view, when it's high quality, it's huge. And um, when I think about how Recut is being positioned into the work I'm doing, is not just for my channel. I really very much look forward to using it for a lot of my clients work as well. So with that said, Dave, I just like I got so distracted by how much I like the product. I really do. And this is so phenomenal because I have purchased, like everybody else, I've purchased so many things I don't use and I can't return anymore. But this is something that I just open it up and I use every single day. And so there's
Awesome.
yeah, I'm so glad I get to say this to you. Seriously. And what is the community aspect of things? Because I should ask, the first question is, are you like a one person solo entrepreneur? Do you have a small team supporting you?
Right now it's just me. Yeah. So
That's amazing.
there is no real community aspect to it. Outside of like me on Twitter. I think it's pretty much it.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, I've thought about setting up some sort of a little Recut Discord or something, but nothing yet.
Yeah, I can see you a Discord person, but because I think it's really interesting how people who like to use Recut tend to be a certain type of YouTubers. I think a certain type of
Yeah.
content creators. It would be really interesting to kind of bring us together, which I think is the power of for today's like digital age. When the moment you talked about 30 by 500.com, and I already know I already bookmarked it and I want to read it. So that's yeah, okay. That's really interesting. So what would be the future of not just Get Recut, but also Dave Ceddia? You've been an entrepreneur for now 4 solid years. Like, where would be an ideal situation scenario to be like in the near future? Like, will be an ideal outcome?
That's a great question. I've always been I've always been so bad at this, like, "What's your 5-year plan?" question. I'm like, "I don't know. Just trying to figure out tomorrow."
Right. That's also what you're trying to figure out today. Oh, to get through the day right now.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, no, I don't know. I don't know. I think I feel right now I've got this mix of things where I've got the kinda content creation, education stuff on one side
Mhm.
and kinda Recut on the other, and there's not much overlap there. Um, and lately I've been spending more time on Recut, but I could also totally see myself kinda getting that to a point where it's sustaining itself and I can go back to the education stuff for a while.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, I don't know. That's kind of the plan for now. Kind of keep rolling with it and see which direction I get pulled in, I guess.
Mhm. And so, in terms of which directions, one thing we haven't talked about, which is multiple streams of income, it's one of the most important things I've learned. Even when I had a full time job, my biggest fear was, what if this goes away? Like, literally, like everything is gone. And so, I noticed that in my 20s and watching my very artistic parents have different clients and travel the world a bit, and to realize, you know what, it's nice to have not just one client. And so,
Yeah.
we're just wondering, Dave, from what you have learned running your blog, having your courses, your book, and then now Get Recut, you're balancing. There are a lot of plates spinning right now. Is that intentional? And we don't. You don't have to reveal your revenue and dollar amount, but roughly, what is the percentage of income, just to give people a sense of, like why having more than a single stream of income is so crucial.
Yeah. So I think last year it was kind of split evenly actually, like in thirds. It was like Recut and then course stuff and then client work.
No
Um,
way.
yeah, kind of worked out that way.
Yeah.
Um, And, yeah, and I've got, like, a little bit of part-time client work, kinda keeping my hands into the React world and doing some work there, um, and then a bunch of other stuff on my own, but I enjoy having a bunch of different things going on, I think. I like being able to hop around between things. Kinda lines
Mhm.
up with my many hobbies, I guess.
Well, let's talk about many hobbies.
Yeah,
That's something I
yeah,
definitely relate to. And thanks for sharing that, one third, one third, one third. And it's true. I think we don't acknowledge that. Like somebody should go all in to doing
yeah,
something, which is like kind of from my culture, my background. Like you're supposed to be a scientist, go work for NASA for the rest of your life, and
yeah.
be the best at something. And that is, I think that can be such a detriment sometimes. And so let's talk about interests. So you mentioned at the beginning, I didn't ignore you. So what are some of the things you like to do on the side?
Yeah, so, totally, like, I think maybe there's a generational thing here too, like, where, I don't know, at least my parents and stuff came from a generation where it's like you get a job and you stay at the job forever, and that's you're lucky to have that job and you never
Mm.
leave. Whereas now I
Yeah,
think now we're sort of, like, hopping around and stuff, and, I think when I left my first job, they were like, "Why are you leaving? Like, this is a great place." It's like
yeah. What's
very
what's going
prestigious,
on?
like, why would you leave? Um, and I it's yeah, I think it's kinda things have changed a bit, and it's easier to hop around, and I think it's less, um,
Mhm,
I don't know, there's less stigma or something. But I
mhm,
think in terms of hobbies, it sort of changes, like, I play music, like, I've got guitar and bass and ukulele, and I do some woodworking. I have my pilot's license. Yeah, so you've got some
uh,
instruments too. Yeah,
yeah,
um
yeah.
and it's
Please
like
continue.
I don't, I wouldn't say that I do all these things all the time. It's
Mhm,
not like I'm round robining between guitar and woodworking and recut and stuff
Mm.
every day. Like it's kind of like
Yeah.
I'll do one thing for a while and then I'll completely forget about the other stuff. And then there'll be kind of like seasons where I go through different activities.
Mm. Love it. So you mentioned definitely musical instruments, woodworking, which is just yeah, it's incredible for me. Now in renovating the basement, for me to recall the people I worked with who were so good, with their crafts and make me wanna learn some of these things. Um, but, you mentioned kind of going through seasons with your interests, like, I think that's good, right? That's refreshing that I think that takes you away from the everyday grind, React, JavaScript, and, like, in a coding interface all day, every day? Like, does it bring inspiration? So how do you think that balance your life more that way?
Yeah, I guess it probably does. I think
Mhm,
I think day to day, like lately it's been pretty much just coding and stuff.
mhm,
So I think maybe the balance is kind of longer term, like over the course of like months or something, I might pick up something else for a while. But
mhm,
over the course of like days or weeks, it's kind of usually focused on like one or two things.
mhm,
Um, yeah, I definitely do feel like deep down that I should be doing one thing. I think I
mhm.
definitely relate to that feeling of like, well, even if I have all these interests, like I probably should just pare it down to one though, right? Like,
Right,
um,
right.
but that hasn't happened so far, and I
Mm.
don't really see that happening.
So yeah, for whoever's watching this with many interests, you're not alone. And it's been Dave, it's been such a pleasant conversation, and I get to know about you, your work, and it's like talking about Recut. It's one of those things as a creator. Like, where has it been my whole life? I mean, I haven't even been a YouTuber that long, but I've been like working with videos for a long time. So I wish it existed, and I just listed the link on the screen once again. So yeah, Dave, thanks again for joining us. Any parting words, anything? I listed your bio, all your socials in the description below. Anything that you like to say before we wrap up?
Thank you. No, thank you for having me. This was a lot of fun to talk. Yeah, all this recut and content creation and stuff. I love talking about this stuff. And if anyone else wants to chat about this stuff, I'm at Ceddia on Twitter. You can find the links and everything. But always happy to chat
Cool.
about this stuff.
Awesome. All right, I'm going to take us offline. Please don't go anywhere just yet. All right, to our live audience, thank you so much for stopping by, for spending the hour with us, and I will see you next time.